Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2023 Audi A5, we're going to be showing you how to install the Stealth Trailer Hitch receiver. Before we do that though, let's take a minute, check it out, and make sure it's going to work for you. So when it comes to these A5s, you know, they're really good looking cars, and if I was to want to put a hitch on it, my biggest concern would be the appearance, right? Don't want to do anything to take away from the looks of this. And that's where a hitch like the Stealth Hitch is going to come into play. So believe it or not, the main body of our hitch is actually installed on the car. It's sitting behind her bumper, and you're not going to be able to see anything. You know, it's going to look completely factory whenever you're not wanting to use a hitch, of course. But whenever you are ready, you're going to have the receiver tube that's detachable. This will kind of lock into place there. All right. It'll plug in. And now you have that attachment point to be able to use your accessory. With the Stealth hitches, there are going to be two kits, if you will, right? You're going to have one that you can only use accessories with, like a bike rack or a cargo carrier. And that's what our neighbor here today is planning on doing. That's the package that they got. So you'll get your receiver tube, you know, you can plug your bike rack or whatever in and be good to go. With that said, you know, with this style, you're not able to take a regular hitch ball mount, plug that in, and tow a trailer around. If that's what you're wanting to do, Stealth Hitch offers another package where it comes with the special hitch ball mount, and it'll come with some trailer wiring. That way you can set your Audi up to actually tow. Or, you know, you can also, you know, if you know for a fact you're going to use just accessories now, but maybe pull some trailers in the future, you can also pick up a conversion kit, I guess you could call it, which will come with a few ins and outs and that special ball mount to allow you to kind of set everything up, work with what you already got, and still be able to pull a trailer. This is going to have a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening though, which is a good thing. A lot of accessories will work with this. You can also pick up separate receiver tubes in the smaller 1.25 by 1.25 size. So if you know, you already have an accessory that size or something, that's always an option. And this is going to use the standard 5/8 pin and clip. Keep in mind though, one doesn't come with the hitch. If you need one, not a huge deal, you can grab it here at eTrailer. Or a lot of times if you end up buying a new accessory, they'll come with one. So just something to look out for. As far as the weight capacities go, you know, how much weight this is going to be able to handle. It's going to have a 350-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, which is the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. So that's a decent number. You know, you'll have no problem using 1 and 2 bike racks. You know, 3 will probably be in pretty good shape. If you end up using a 4, you know, it's just going to kind of depend on how heavy the rack is and how heavy your bikes are, things like that, just to give you an example. We'll go ahead, grab a couple of measurements now, and these will help us figure out what type of accessories will work best. So if we go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, taking the lift that our car's on into account, of course, that would make it about 11.5 inches. So for a car that rides slow to the ground, that's not too bad, to be quite honest. But you know, if you're going to be using a new accessory, if you can find one that has a rise in the shank, definitely won't hurt. You know, buy a little more ground clearance to be on the safe side. If you go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of our rear bumper, that's only about 1.5 inches, which is really good. So you shouldn't run into any issues here, really. But if need be, you can use that to help figure out that if any folding type accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back of your Audi. Something some people wonder about is if the hands-free liftgate assist feature is still going to work with the hitch in place. And I haven't heard of it not working or nothing really brought up about it. The kit, the hitch does come with a few things that lets you kind of reroute that stuff to maintain it there. So I don't see why it wouldn't. I'll be honest with you, I messed with it for a few minutes trying to get it to open. I just couldn't really find that sweet spot. But from my understanding, it's supposed to all function. And honestly, anyway, you know, if you were to ask me, when you got the hitch back here, you're probably going to have your accessory back here, right? And so it's going to take up the space, and what are the chances of you even coming in here trying to do that anyway? So, you know, if you were to ask me, not really a huge deal. But other than that, at the end of the day, You know, an awesome setup for the Audi. Gives you that good clearance and good capacities when you are using it, but a factory super clean appearance whenever you're not using it. So really can't go wrong. As far as the installation goes, you know, it wasn't terrible by any means. Everything's kind of tight. You got to take apart quite a bit of stuff, but all the fasteners are you know, similar in size. You don't need all these crazy tools and all that type of thing. So as long as you take your time, stay focused, should be in pretty good shape, and hopefully our video will get you going in the right direction. But that said, why don't we go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to need to remove our fascia, and so open up your hatch, and first thing that we can do is focus on our tail lights. And since we're going to be kind of prying and working around this area, I took some painter's tape and just put it all around here. That way we don't scratch anything up. But you're gonna have this small cover, and you can take a trim tool and you're just gonna kind of pry, kind of push it down and inward. Work your way down. That'll release it. Set that off to the side. Then we're gonna have two fasteners in there holding our tail light on. And I want to mention from this point on, whatever we do to one side of our vehicle, we'll also do it to the other side. So we set up the same way. Take a T25 Torx bit, pull them out. They are kind of buried in there, so just carefully pull them out. That way you don't lose them. We'll get our light removed now. So I'm kind of working around, pulling it back towards you. It'll release. If it doesn't want to free up, you know, you can always take a trim tool and very carefully just give it a little help. Well, this will pop out. We can disconnect it. So this little tab there, you push down on it, unplug it, and we'll set our light off to the side. You can now move to your rear wheel well. And these fasteners are kind of tricky to see. There's going to be three of them, and one towards the bottom, one in the middle, and one up top here. And you can take a T25 Torx bit and get them all removed. I can manage to work this out here. I'll give you a better look at one of these fasteners. So that's what they're going to look like. Like I said, we'll have three that run along down the edge there. Once you get the last one out, what you can do is actually grab the liner, kind of tuck that in, and that'll allow us to get to another fastener located right here in this area. So that fastener that we're looking for, the head of it will be on the bottom, so the screw's actually running up, and it's right at the corner where the fascia actually meets our quarter panel. And so you want to pull that out as well with the same Torx bit, which is a T25. Moving underneath the vehicle now, on each side of it, you're going to have a 10 millimeter plastic nut there that you can remove. Get that out of the way, then we'll change back out for T25, and we'll have this fastener here to pull out as well. Back inside the vehicle now, on each side you're going to have these compartments and little quarter turn up there. You can pop this out. And you won't have to do this part on the driver's side, but over here on the passenger side, we have this electrical connector for our 12-volt outlet. Just push down on the tab. We'll disconnect that. That way we can move this stuff out of the way. Okay, now remove our floor covering. So this piece here, and nothing to this one at all, it just lifts up and out of place. I'll get this out of our way. and then we can remove this piece. So this is our threshold, and I believe we should just be able to pop it up. So I'm grabbing on the bottom and on each side, working our way to the middle, and with this released, we'll get it out of our way. So on each side of our vehicle, you know, where our threshold was, we have this opening here, and inside of it there's a 10mm nut, and it's kind of buried in there. So you don't want to drop the nut, of course. One of the things you can do, take a 10mm deep ball socket, and sometimes if you just rip off a little piece of paper towel or something and kind of start it in there, that'll actually kind of hold the nut better. Very carefully slide that out, pull the nut out, our paper towel, and then we'll reload another paper towel in here for the one on the other side. Moving to where those little compartment doors were that we removed, you're going to have another setup pretty much the same as the ones we just did. It's a lot easier to get to though, so I'm not going to use the paper towel trick. Simply just loosen it up pretty much all the way, and then finish it by hand here. If you look where our taillights were, in that corner, there's going to be this pin, and you can pry it out with a flathead screwdriver. And it's pretty long, so once you get it released, this whole thing will slide out. So at this point, we're just about ready to actually start pulling our fascia off of the vehicle. And with these Audis, on the driver's side, or that's where it usually is, there's an electrical connector plug. You might be tempted to unplug it and just get the fascia out of the way completely, but you don't want to do that because you can kind of run into some issues and have to go to the dealer and stuff you just don't want to have to deal with. So to play it safe, I'm going to leave ours plugged in. And with that said, you want to make sure to kind of have something ready when you're doing this. That way you can get the fascia off, leave it plugged in, and have somewhere safe you can set it on. That way it won't get damaged. So you definitely want an extra set of hands to do this. Makes it a lot easier, but what you can do is kind of start here at the corner and kind of work your way behind here. And this will start to release. Just very carefully pop this thing off, and we can get it set over on our cart there. One thing you can do just to buy some more space is some of these wires are kind of just clipped to the fascia, so you can unsnap them, you know, take a trim tool or something, and that'll buy you just a little bit more room, make everything a little bit more manageable. I'm just going to kind of work our way around here to the obvious ones and go from there. Should buy us a little more space, and especially over on the driver's side, you know, you can tape everything up real good so you don't scratch anything up here. So whenever you're doing this, just take your time. You know, it might help if you can raise your car up or lower it or change what you're having your fascia set on. We were able to eventually get this flipped over and kind of laid how we have it. One thing I do want to mention, so right here where wiring comes through, you know, everything's just super tight, and be conscious of that. I just took a piece of wiring I had laying around and put that over it, just so it wasn't rubbing against, you know, a sharp edge of metal. But, you know, you can take some tape or a towel or something, put it in there, just to be on the safe side. On each side of our vehicle, we're gonna have 3 bolts we can pull out to remove our bumper beam. So these 2, and then there's one just like it on the bottom inside. 16 millimeter socket. We'll get them removed. What I like to do is just take one of them and put it back in, hand tie it a few threads. That way when we take all the hardware off, our bumper beam's just not gonna come falling off on top of us. So now inside of the vehicle, and this is just over here on the passenger side, if you kind of lift up on this carpet, you'll see there's another 16 millimeter nut that's holding our bumper beam on. So I'm just using, not a ton of space, I'm just using a wrench like this. But this one will get pulled off as well. Finally, we can loosen up those bolts that we left in hand tight. And remove our bumper beam. So the way this is going to work, you can take your hitch, and the hitch is going to line up with all the holes that our bumper beam did. So the hitch will go on there, and then the bumper beam will sit on top of it. And so essentially the hitch will be kind of sandwiched between the bumper beam and the back of our vehicle. As far as the hardware, so for that one that we removed inside, you're just going to reuse a factory nut. But for all the other attachment points, the bolts, you're going to use the ones that come in the kit here. So they'll all be the same, just a bolt, a split lock washer, put that on, and then you'll put on a flat washer. So hopefully we can do this by ourselves here. I think we will. We'll start by sliding the hitch on. Kind of hold that up where it needs to be. We'll get our bumper beam on, and then we'll take that new hardware and get at least one started on each side, hand tight. That way everything will be supported while we work on the rest of the hardware. We'll go ahead and snug everything up now. You do want to make sure that the hitch is centered. Ours kind of just fell in the perfect spot, and you really can't shift it a whole lot anyway, so I think we're in good shape there. But we'll snug everything down. For the new bolts, you can use a 17 millimeter socket, and I kind of like to crisscross them just to kind of draw everything in evenly. Now you want to make sure to come back with a torque wrench and torque all the hardware down to the amount specified in the instructions. At this point, you can grab this block, and this is actually to get bolted up to our hitch. So when you put this on, you want to make sure that the handle is on the passenger side of the car, and these big bolts, you want to make sure that you run them from the passenger side to the driver's side. And our particular kit is just for accessories. If you happen to have a towing kit, you might have some safety chain loops or something you have to put on there. So reference your instructions. Get both of these going though. Take the nut and get them started. And then I'll tighten these down. So I got a 15/16 size socket and wrench. I'll snug these up. Once you get those big bolts snug, again, come back with your torque wrench and get them completely tightened down. At this point, if you have just the rack receiver kit like we do, not the towing kit, we can start to trim out our fascia and get that sorted. If you have the towing kit, you can refer to your instructions, and at this point, you'd want to start installing some of the trailer wiring that comes along with the hitch. So on the bottom part of your fascia, along through here, there's a cable or a sensor, I believe for your hands-free liftgate assist. And if you grab one end of it, kind of just carefully remove it from the keepers. That way when we're trimming our area out, we're not going to accidentally hit this and damage it. What you can do on the bottom of your fascia, I put some painter's tape here, that way we could draw on it. And in the instructions, there's a diagram with some measurements that you can follow to get everything marked out. So, in our case, the bottom is wider than the top. And so you're gonna have some type of radius, on the outside edges there. And I just kind of eyeballed it and got the curve or radius that I like. And I wanted to mirror that on the other side. That way it's exactly the same. So what I came up with is I actually got it how I wanted it, and I drew it nice and dark, and then I just took a square piece of printer paper, held it on there, and I took a flashlight, kind of shined it down through here, and I was able to kind of lean it back, and trace it, and then cut that out. And then that allowed me to replicate that same radius over on this side. That way everything looks real clean, and it's definitely worth spending a little bit of extra time on this part to have everything look really good. To trim this out, it is pretty thick plastic actually. I'm going to use a multi-tool or an oscillating tool, some people call it, to do this. I feel like it gives you a lot of control. But a Dremel tool or anything along those lines will work. So just take your time and get all this material removed. So once I was happy with the cut and got that piece removed, a lot of times you'll have some rough edges, so I just went back with this little cartridge roller here and kind of knocked all that rough stuff down to clean it up. If you don't have one of these, not a big deal. You can use sandpaper or a file, or sometimes you come in with a utility knife and just kind of smooth everything out. So what I've done now is re-secured our kick sensor wire. And what I did, I just kind of popped it back in the first few keepers and then just took a pair of snips and cut a little square out there, pushed it through, and they actually give you these two-sided sticky tape zip tie anchor deals here, so you can clean off your fascia real good with some rubbing alcohol on a towel, let it dry. Stick this to it, then zip tie the sensor wire all the way around the opening. I did the same thing here, snipped out a little plastic piece, and continued to utilize the factory keepers there. So at this point, now we're ready to reinstall our fascia. And when you're doing this, it's going to go on the opposite way that we removed it. Once you have the fascia all put back together, there's really nothing worth mentioning as far as differences or any challenging things I ran into. It all went back together pretty smooth. So If you're not going to be using your hitch right away, leave it like this. If you are ready to use it, you can take that receiver tube and just pop it into place. Then use your favorite accessory. But with that done, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Stealth Trailer Hitch receiver on our 2023 Audi A5.